And the what I want to do, and we can put it out in the
Okay. All right. Good evening. We are coming towards the end of Hanukkah. I guess not really even. No, we're still
Just flip toward the other side.
We're on the second half. Okay, that's what it is. We're not towards the end yet. We're in the second half of Hanukkah. So last week we spoke about the theme, the motif going through Sefer Bereshis of the brothers, which is related to Hanukkah because of Yehuda and Yosef. But I don't know if I really delved into the connection in more depth between the Greeks and the Jews. I don't think I did that in any great depth yet. Yeah. So I want to do that today because the more I'm reading about it, and the more that I'm being reminded of classes I heard years past and seeing it, the more I'm like, it's a very. I'm gonna start off with the following statement that the rabbis teach us. Yeah. The rabbis teach us a very profound idea, which is that the worst lies are the lies that are 99% truth. Right? The more truth that is in the lie, the more dangerous the lie is. Because
that's a very deep philosophy,
right? It's a pretty deep idea, and I think I'm sure you can come up with 100 different reasons why, but the one that always is very very simple, straightforward reason is because those are the ones that truth-seeking people are the most likely to fall for. Right? Someone who wants truth, and you show them something that's mostly truth, but there's a lie in it. It's very understandable why they would fall for it. Yeah, because they don't realize that there's the lie mixed in, right? The truth that has lies mixed into it is truly the dangerous lie, right? And the more truth that's there, the more the lie gets hidden, right? This is we were probably the whole Erev Rav discussion we were having earlier is really mixed in with that. Now that I'm thinking about it, right?
Yep.
People who are very religious, right? But there's just a part that's deep inside that's broken and wrong, but they don't realize because it's hidden, it's covered by all the truth and all the amazingness. So the greatest example in Torah literature of something that is really close to truth, but there's a lie in it, and we Jewish people fall for it, is Greece. Greece is the ultimate epitome of this. You know, if you take a look in the Talmud, the rabbis say incredibly positive things about Greece. A Torah scroll can be written in Greek, and like a kosher Torah scroll used in the synagogue.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That's news.
I know. I also was shocked when I first saw this. If I remember correctly, it's written in gold letters instead of black letters, like a Hebrew Torah scroll, and it's not modern Greek. We're talking about the ancient Greek.
That's not a whole language.
That's what I'm saying. Like no other language. There's no language in the world except for biblical Hebrew and ancient Greek that you can have a kosher Torah scroll. You say, as far as I remember, you say brachas on it. You pick it up and show everyone. You use it in the synagogue. It's crazy. And the rabbis say why. And this on its own could probably be a whole class. I would have to research it more because I only know a few tidbits. But the next statement is already a gateway to a whole nother world. The rabbis say that the Greek language is the most beautiful of all languages.
Ancient.
Correct. Yeah. The Greek that the rabbis in the Talmud are talking about.
Is it different from today's?
Yeah, a lot. You know, there's like modern English is very different. You know, like the word like knight, like a knight in shining armor. You know, it's spelled Knight. If you go back 600-700 years ago, it would have been pronounced knicht. Right. That's the old, like early Middle English or late Old English. By the way, why? Because Yiddish is based on German, and the Old English is coming from Anglo-Saxon, and Anglo-Saxon is coming from German and Viking, right? So, right, even you see a lot of this, like a lot of the words that we have today that don't make any sense the way they're pronounced. They used to be pronounced those letters. We just don't pronounce them anymore. Right. And also, Old English used to have male and female words as well. They got rid of that. We don't have that in English anymore. We still have it in Russian. We still have it in Hebrew, etc., etc. Okay. So ancient Greek, I don't know, I have no idea what it sounds like, but the rabbi said it's the most beautiful of all languages. Which again, just think about what language means, and you can imagine that that's a whole discussion on its own.
I'm so sorry, but even Aramaic didn't make it that far.
Or Hebrew.
No, but I mean, yeah, because we do say Kaddish in Aramaic, so
Right.
you was like, oh, okay. Like,
And
all right.
Aramaic is the language of the angels. No, I got that wrong. Aramaic is the one language the angels don't know. That's what it is. That's why we say a lot of things in Aramaic when we don't want the angels to hear it.
I love that explanation. Never heard of it.
That's that, right? So Hebrew, Aramaic, but Greek. Like what's going on? And obviously language, there's a lot to language, but right. And I think the one that blew me away the most, especially as somebody, when you grow up, I didn't grow up with this, but I went through Baal Tshuva Yeshiva, and I see my kids grow up with it. You get a lot, you're gonna love this. I just heard a rabbi at an Olani conference. He used a great line. I'm gonna steal this line. He says, he was learning with some guys who had served time in yeshiva, and like served time in jail. It's like some people learn in yeshiva and some people serve time in yeshiva, right? So like you learned in yeshiva.
No, it's just that.
No, you're no. I know what your time was. Your time was not what we're talking about. And so sometimes people they get the propaganda and they never grow out of it. It's okay. By the way, I'm using propaganda because, of course, propaganda and brainwashing are perfectly fine for children. You can't educate a child. They're not emotionally, intellectually ready for that yet. But if someone is 15, 20, 25, 30, and they're still understanding Torah the way they learned it when they were 5 or 10, there's a serious problem. That means either they're immature and never learned, or what's very likely, their parents and teachers never took them to the next level of understanding. So, for example, and this is related to our topic, is that everyone grows up learning that the rabbis of the Talmud are flawless. They're basically superhuman. They know everything. They're mystical. They're miracle workers, and they never make mistakes. Now, I don't know if they say it in those words, but that is the clear implication that you get from people who talk about the rabbis of the Talmud. I remember when I was learning about the issues with science and Torah, and if you would dare to say the rabbis of the Talmud made a mistake and didn't understand science, like Rabbi Nosson Slifkin, who wrote books on this and was excommunicated, and many rabbis called him a heretic, probably rabbis on YouTube, right? So you how could you possibly say such a thing? And yet, with all that propaganda, right? In the Talmud, the rabbis say that there are times when they and the Greeks had a disagreement on a fact of the universe, and the Greeks were right and the rabbis were wrong. The rabbis themselves say it. The specific example that occurs to me, I'm sure there are a couple, but this is one I just remember from when I learned it back in my days in yeshiva, was the gestational period of a specific species of snake. The rabbi said it's this many months, and the Greeks say it's this many months, and the Greeks are right and we're wrong.
Wow, it's very brave.
Because the rabbis the rabbis in the Talmud never said that they're flawless and don't make mistakes. Right? King Solomon says there's no man who's so holy that never sins. Right? So if nobody ever sins, and my Rosh Yeshiva of Noach Weinberg says that the word for sin, chet, really is translated as error, make a mistake, to miss the mark. So another way of you can translate King Solomon's statement is there's no man who's so special that he never makes mistakes. Right? That's a perfectly legitimate translation of that as well. And certainly the rabbis of the Talmud themselves sometimes take our forefathers to task. Yaakov made a mistake, Avraham made a mistake. So how could they say that and they're the ones who say they were nothing compared to our forefathers? I think my favorite statement is that one of the rabbis talking about the greatness of the forefathers, and he says that I'm not even worthy to be in the shadow of the dung of the donkey of the Avos. So the idea of Yeridas Hadora is the lowering of the generations. So if they're saying that the great forefathers made mistakes and we're nothing compared to the forefathers, the obvious implication is, of course, we can make mistakes. And yet it's happened. Okay. Sorry, I'm going off on this a little more because it's a pet peeve of mine, that people, like, don't get me wrong. I'm nothing compared to those rabbis. I'm not saying that I'm any better than them in any way, shape, or form. But if you're I get it. You're teaching 5-year-old kids. You're teaching 10-year-old kids. The rabbis are superhuman, flawless beings. I can get that. But you start to get a little older, you start to understand, you start to learn a little bit, you start to go, okay, they're ridiculously great, but no one's perfect, and here's maybe a mistake, they discuss it, okay. When you go further and further throughout the Talmud and sources, you realize, like, probably the most famous example in all of Jewish history is the Rambam. The Rambam talked about Aristotle, and he said that Aristotle was the greatest human being who ever lived, but because he wasn't a Jew, he couldn't be a prophet or Navi. He says he was, sorry, not the greatest, he was amongst the greatest, right? Rambam says that Aristotle was one of the greatest human beings that ever lived, that if he would have been a Jew and had the right neshama, he would have had prophecy. He was worthy on his level of intellectual capacity to be a prophet. That's what the Rambam says. Now, it's true that other rabbis take the Rambam to task, and he said the Rambam was in love with Aristotle too much. Plenty of rabbis have a problem with the Rambam for saying that, but you can't take away from the Rambam's greatness. Right? He's one of our greatest rabbis, one of the princes of the Rishonim. So even if there are other great rabbis who disagree with them, you still have to take him very seriously. You can't dismiss anything the Rambam says. And he said Aristotle was a giant. And the whole Mor Nevuchim, the guides that are perplexed, the whole book is trying to reconcile Aristotelian Greek philosophy as understood by Arab philosophers, because that's who the source was, with Judaism, right? So you had Arab philosophers who had learned Aristotle, and they were having issues with religion. And so Rambam was saying, for those Jews who are learning Aristotelian philosophy from these Arab philosophers, and they're really blown away by the incredible depth and genius of this philosophy, since you see that there seem to be contradictions between the philosophy and Torah, let me come and explain how it's not really contradictory. Right? This is the same thing that many people have done with science and Torah. The Rambam did with Aristotle's philosophy and Torah. Right? That it's not arguing really. You have to understand it's a different language, different approach, different angle. Why would he have to do it? Just say no. The philosophy is all wrong. You don't need to reconcile it. Philosophy is stupid and wrong and bad, and Torah is true. And don't worry, don't listen to these Arab philosophers anyway. Right? No, he doesn't, because he's saying that there's tremendous wisdom in this Greek philosophy, massive wisdom. So the kind of the punchline of the whole discussion, I don't want to hide. What do they say in journalism? Don't bury the lead, right? You want to have your main points up front, not hidden 2 pages in. So, of course, we're going to have to try to understand that that all of the greatness of Greece is only good if it's secondary to Torah. Right? As Noach blessed his sons, I think we discussed this last week, and we're bringing it back again. Noach blessed his sons that Yafet should dwell in the tent of Shem. Shem is purpose, Torah, we're Shemites. Judaism is coming through the line of Shem. And Yafet, one of his sons was Yavan, and that's where the name Greece comes from. And the idea of the beauty, the aesthetics, and the sports, properly understood, physical fitness, strength, math and science and technology, and all of these great, basically this is what we call Greek ideas, is, if it is secondary to Torah, it's wonderful. If it leaves the tent of Torah and takes on its own primacy, it becomes eventually secular humanism, atheism, which then eventually becomes Marxism, which then winds up like a snake biting its own tail, which then winds up turning around and destroying reason. The Greek concept of reason and rationality, if it's in service to Torah, is wonderful. If it tries to make itself king, it winds up undermining itself and creating a philosophy that's anti-reason. And that's what we see today. We see that the world of secular humanism has been corrupted from within, is destroying itself, to the point that now people are saying that reason and rationality are just a tool of people who are in power to subjugate their victims. That's the Marxist angle on it. And the Islamist angle on it is that rationality and reason are servants of Satan, and you just have to have faith in Allah, right? They're really they're coming to the same conclusion about that reason and rationality are evil and wrong, which they can be when they become their own thing. So I just saw an idea recently along these lines. Oh, I think we talked about this recently. I think we even touched on this last week. Is that reason requires faith first? Right? Remember we talked about this last week, right? And so the tent that
you mentioned that. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we talked about it on Shabbos. I don't know. I remember talking on it recently. I can't remember exactly which context. I didn't listen to my entire class from last week, so I don't remember if I mentioned it. But it's fine. If I did, it's just a quick review. And what that really means is that you need that reason and rationality are not self-explanatory. When the founding fathers in the United States, when they wrote in the Declaration of Independence that we hold these truths to be self-evident, Thomas Jefferson didn't actually write that. If you saw the wonderful HBO series on John Adams, which is based on a book, if you haven't seen it yet, it is amazing. You want to learn about American history through historical drama? Absolutely fantastic. It's based on a wonderful. It's based on a wonderful book about John Adams. I read the book, and then when I saw that they were making an HBO miniseries, not a documentary, it's a miniseries, but it was based on this book. I was like, oh, I have to watch it, and it's great. The acting, the production values, world class, and you learn a lot about American history. You learn about philosophy, you learn about religion. It's because these people, that's what they talked about. So when Thomas Jefferson wrote that line, he originally wrote, "We hold these truths to be sacred and." I forget the other word, but sacred, holy. And then Benjamin Franklin, according to the movie, I don't remember the book, but according to the movie, Benjamin Franklin said it smells too much like religion. And so people who are a little more deistic or atheistic are going to be pushed off by it. Let's change it to something that everybody could swallow, which is we hold these truths to be self-evident. Now, what Thomas Jefferson understood is that nothing is self-evident. There's no such thing as self-evident because nothing explains itself. There is no truth. This is, the famous Gödel's incompleteness theorem that he talked about with Einstein back in the 50s in America, 40s and 50s America in Princeton. He said mathematically you can prove that every system of truth requires givens or axioms or ideas that are themselves not provable from within the system of truth. In other words, in religious terms, all truths require faith that cannot be proven by the truth. As the current Rosh Yeshiva Eish Torah, it's very deep ideas. The current Rosh Yeshiva Eish Torah said to us, right, that the reason that you love truth is because you feel like loving truth, but you can't explain why. It's that he used feelings, right? But it's not just emotions. It's really coming from. There's a part of me that desires truth, but I can't explain from within truth why I desire it. I desire it because I desire it. This is the level in the Sfirot, the Holy Sfirot, the level of Keter, the level of Ratzon, the level of will. Rabbi Kiva Tatz has a beautiful series of classes on this. He says at the highest level of who we are as a neshama, you want what you want because you want it. It's not explainable. Now, it's true we can use tefillah, prayer, to change our ratzon, try to align our ratzon with Hashem. We could do that. But you can't explain why you want it. You can even do an exercise. You could say, why are you doing what you're doing? Because of this. And why? And if you keep saying why, eventually you get to the answer because, and you can't go any deeper. And once you reach that point, that's your will. That's your soul. That's the highest level of your soul. You can't actually dig deeper than that. There is nothing deeper than that. It's the point of your innermost self. There's no explanation. There's no deeper explanation. It is because it is. You want because you want. All of that is on a level of faith. You can't explain that. You can't. Certainly not rationally, not with logic, not with pulling things apart and putting them back together, which is how rational thinking works. And so one of the greatest ironies of rational thinking is rational thinking requires an irrational basis. And that's why I've not yet had the pleasure, so I don't want to pretend I'm an expert in these things, so take it with a grain of salt. I've not yet had the pleasure to read through Immanuel Kant's works. But what I have seen about, like, he has a book, The Critique of Pure Reason, for example, one of his famous works. And whenever somebody is critiquing reason, what I heard, I think Rabbi Tatz actually uses this metaphor. He says it's like a camera trying to take a picture of itself. Have you heard this mashal before? A camera can't picture itself, and the rational mind cannot explain itself. Right? There's a point where if you try to use reason to critique reason, you can. I'm not saying you can't, but if you dig too deep, I'll give you another wonderful metaphor. It's like sawing off the branch that you're sitting on. This is one of the greatest tragedies of postmodernist thinking and communist thinking, is once you undermine rational thinking, there is no rationality anymore. But the irony is that the tool that you use to undermine it is also gone, because the tool you used was rationality. So there's a series of self-defeating arguments. If the tool you're using winds up destroying itself, then that means you can no longer, that it's a paradox. It's a rational paradox. You're now showing that you could never have started the chain of arguments that you've now made, and therefore your argument is not true. There's plenty of room for doubt in rationality, of course, obviously, but to undermine the entire rational process is to undermine our ability to think. And so we have faith that there is something true to reason and rationality. Now, it happens to be, I think we can do more than that. At the end of the day, it's definitely faith. Why? Because like I was told that many people, when they take a philosophy course in college, that the first thing they do is prove to them that can't even prove their own existence. Now, what's the purpose of that? So that you always have healthy doubts about reason and rationality, which is important for every thinking person to have. However, I think that sometimes doubt goes too far. Like, let's just say, so Professor Jordan Peterson, I heard him talk about this, and then I wound up looking them up myself, and I really, really like a lot of what they say, is what's called the pragmatist school of American philosophy. I think it's the only purely American branch of philosophy. And it was in the early 20th century, and the only guy who I happen to remember off the top of my head is a guy named John Dewey, who, if you remember, the Dewey Decimal System, he's the guy who invented the early way in America of organizing books in the library. It's called the Dewey Decimal System. He invented that. So,
there's a building named after him on Columbia campus.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because he was a great early American thinker. And he and a few other guys created an American school of philosophy called pragmatism, the pragmatic school. And to them, what is true is what brings the most success in life, ultimately, over the large scale. A pragmatic version of truth. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this is 100% what we should believe, but I think it's a useful tool. Because at the end of the day, if one of my favorite arguments that convinces myself that reason and rationality are true things, and they're not just an illusion, is because of technology. Because technology is based entirely on rationality and reason. And I see technology works. So pragmatically, I have reason to be confident that reason and rationality are true, at least to some extent. Right? So it starts with faith, for sure, but it doesn't, I don't think it's not only faith. I think you can have good reasons to believe that reason is true, even though you can never prove it. Why can't I prove it? Just like I can't prove I exist. Maybe all this is an illusion. Maybe this printer and this phone and me and you and my mom and my mom's husband sitting and watching are all just brains in a jar, and people are putting electrodes. Or maybe there's even a quantum physics. Did you ever hear of the Boltzmann brain?
No.
So according to a scientist philosopher named Boltzmann, I believe he's the one who invented this idea because of why it's called Boltzmann brain. He says, according to the laws of physics and quantum physics, it is possible, although extremely unlikely, that the entirety of the universe that you're experiencing is out of all random physics that it all arranges itself quantum mechanically to create a brain that floats in space for a second, and all of the universe and all of space and time and all the Big Bang and everything we experience was just in the imagination of this temporary brain that was created out of quantum physics and then went back into the cosmos. And we're just living in a Boltzmann brain, and at any moment everything could just go back into nothing, into the nothingness of physics.
This is like interpreting dreams, like anybody can come up with that.
Anybody come with anything.
Because you can't test it out.
You can't. But what's interesting about this one is that what he's showing is that you cannot disprove this from physics. It is a vanishingly small possibility, but still possible. Okay, it's one of those things where sometimes people will come and they'll ask you, Rabbi, isn't it possible that, and they try to bring it as an argument. And one of my favorite things I ever heard from Christopher Hitchens, one of my favorite atheists, he says that any argument brought without evidence can be dismissed the same way. He says, a what if is not an argument.
Yeah.
I don't have to answer every possible what if because there's an infinite number of what ifs. I will do nothing but answer what ifs all day. Bring me an argument that's a positive argument, and then I'll think about it and answer it if I can. But a what if scenario is never a positive argument against someone else. Can you imagine, putting someone in jail because what if? It's ridiculous. So too in philosophy and so too in religion. What if is never an argument. Okay, so the Boltzmann brain is just the greatest example of what if. It's such a silly thing, but people really. But the point of the Boltzmann brain is to show that if you really wanted to stretch your imagination of possibilities that are theoretically, technically possible, maybe all of this is an illusion and reason and rationality are not true. But again, the funny thing is that. But then how did you come up with the Boltzmann brain? By using reason and rationality. So you're undermining your argument again. It's again sawing off the branch of the tree you're sitting on. Okay, I've gone a little bit too far down this rabbit hole. Let me bring it back to Channukah. Sorry. I've been thinking about all of this. I know. I'm sorry. It's a little bit too deep for a Parsha class. But I've been really thinking a lot. And I'm not pretending I have all the answers. This is just a gateway to... As some of my friends used to say, these are the things that you can really only deeply think about after you've had a few hits of some really good drugs.
It reminds me, if I may share, remember the Shmuel in this shared with you that when Adam went to sleep, when Hashem put him to sleep,
yeah.
It never says that he woke up. Like it did say.
That's so interesting.
That he did say.
So maybe we're all still in his dream or something.
It's a possibility.
If you're not, I don't know if you're hearing. Rabbi Tzanor was saying that there's, it says in the Torah that Hashem put Adam in a deep slumber. But somebody pointed out, woke up.
So they were just.
So we all,
yeah. I think it's one of those things where it's obvious.
Because on the other time when he creates Chava, it says he woke up.
Not it would like Yaakov or somebody else was
it does say number of times it says he woke up. So but in this specific,
and here it doesn't.
Right.
Interesting. Right. All of life is a dream, like it says in the song.
About Pharaoh, it says he woke up.
Right. But not by Adam.
Right.
Fascinating. I love it. I have to think about that more. All of life is just a dream in Adam's brain. He's Boltzmann. Okay. All right. So the thing that I wanted to focus on, I got a little bit off track, is just really this concept of how do we properly understand the relationship between Athens and Jerusalem.
Right. And you said what's fascinating is that 99% can be true and this is the worst type of a lie.
Correct.
Right?
So the lie of Greece is that Greece doesn't require Jerusalem. That's the lie. The lie of Greece is that Greece is primary. That's the lie. Everything the Greeks say, obviously not everything. That's a massive exaggeration. But the conceptual process of Greek thinking, of the math and the science and technology, and the philosophy and the thinking about reality is wonderful. It's all good. It's amazing. Obviously, it could be wrong. I'm not saying it's every aspect is true, but the process of let's define Athens as the process of using the human mind to search for truth. And let's define Jerusalem as the receiving of truth from revelation from God.
Okay.
Okay? Both of them are truth seekers. One of them says we receive truth from the Almighty, and this is Torah, Torah's instructions. And within Torah, there's a lot of arguments and discussion because we want to clarify what it is that God told us, right? But it's within the framework of truth was revealed to us. The Greek framework is truth is not something revealed to us, but something we search after using our rational faculties. Both are true, right? The lie of the Greeks is that their truth is superior to the revelation truth. That's the lie. That's the 1%. That's the part that if you don't know it's in there, can destroy everything. And maybe, I just thought of this as we're talking out loud, as we're thinking out loud, I maybe now have a little better idea of why the rabbis said on the day that the Greeks translated the Torah into Greek, it's now a day of fasting for all time.
Yeah.
Because by translating Torah into Greek, they're putting Torah underneath Greek. They're saying that the Torah is subservient, it's secondary to Greek.
But pardon,
Then
but
why did you make it kosher? Why?
that's a separate question. Good question.
Who ruled that it?
But can you?
Kosher? Sorry.
But
Can you move
but listen,
for
I
1%?
just I gotta talk about this because I'm thinking out loud, right? Because when is it kosher? When it's in a Torah scroll.
Okay, that's a good
right?
answer.
When the Greek language is subservient to the purpose of Torah scroll. It's almost the opposite. Instead of translating Torah into Greek letters, you're taking Greek letters and putting them in a kosher Torah scroll, not in a book, not in a library, not on a phone, but in a scroll that's in a synagogue that's used for service. Now it's kosher.
Do we have something like that?
Not, I haven't never heard of it actually existing. Maybe it did back then. I don't know. Or maybe it's something that the rabbi said is theoretically kosher, but never happened.
Can you blame the Greeks for that 1% and thinking they're more important than the Torah? Think about it. If you're Puerto Rican, you're walking in Puerto Rican Day Parade. You're not walking with the Israelis or what's that parade on Lag BaOmer in front of 770? You know what I'm saying? So you're cheering for your team.
Yeah.
It's just logical. Of course they think like we should. It's like you think.
But I'll tell you why not.
You go to like Italians, they'll be like, yeah, we invented the universe. It's like, have you seen this of my big fat Greek wedding? Yeah. And the father says, when you guys were monkeys, we invented the alphabet. Yes, it's like they think they're the center of the universe, and you can't blame them for that.
I'll tell you why. Because the one ingredient that the Greeks are missing, that the Torah has, that the Jews have, the one ingredient that would change this is the ingredient of intellectual humility. That's the one thing. The greatest rabbi who ever lived, Moshe, is the humblest man who ever lived. Because I'll tell you where it leads to. And this is, I think, really one of the most important ideas that I ever learned and thought about is this one. I think I've already had a few pretty interesting ideas today, but I think this is, if you don't remember anything else, I think this might be the most important idea today about understanding the relationship between Athens and Jerusalem, is that a properly calibrated rational mind will itself come to the conclusion of its own limitation and will then defer to revelation and faith.
Which is what Moshe did.
What everybody does.
That's what Abraham did.
Yeah, yes.
That's what Abraham did.
That is exactly what Abraham did. Yes.
That's true, but Abraham could.
But he learned from Abraham. He learned from Abraham. He was standing on Abraham's shoulders. Yes, I think that's a very good insight. Abraham is the one who figured this out. That you use the rational faculty to its nth degree. So let me share with you what Robert Berkowitz said, because it's exactly along these lines. Robert Berkowitz said, "What is the primary argument in the nature of Hashem, in the nature of the creation between the Greeks and the Jews? Is that the Greeks believed." This is okay. Today is the deepest class I think we've ever had. It's fine. We're just keep going. The Greeks believed that the physical finite universe was simultaneously infinite and eternal. And their word for that was hayuli. Hayuli is the Talmud talks about it, the Jewish sources talk about it. It's a Greek word that's the infinite finiteness.
No, I disagree with that because they didn't believe in rational numbers. Remember that Aristotle and the whole thing, they were thinking that there's only whole numbers. So how do they?
But how many whole numbers? An infinite number.
Okay, that's true. But okay,
right.
All right, good point. Good point. Because my understanding is that because they did not believe in the rationality and the whole thing, so it's impossible for them to come up with the idea of.
So I don't know. That's I don't have enough about the connection to mathematics to answer. I just know what Robert Berkowitz told us. He said that the main problem the Greeks had is they could not understand how the universe could be created by an infinite being. Why? And it's a very interesting problem that we also have the same problem. Is because there was a wonderful show on Channel 13 when I was a kid called 3-2-1 Contact. And it was about mechanics and physics. Do you remember 3-2-1 Contact, Mommy?
He remembers that.
PBS.
I don't remember
Something
that.
like
He remembers that.
contact with the
And
captain, something.
song.
Mhm.
They had a song that started the show, which is contact is the answer, is the reason why everything happens, right? Because all physical processes are one thing influences something else through contact, right? How do we see? Because photons bounce off of receptors in our eyes. How do we hear? Because sound waves. So everything is contact, either directly or through some process, which is why the speed of light is so important. Because there are things in the universe that we are never going to ever have interaction with because they're beyond the horizon of contact.
Okay.
Right? So the Greeks understood this already thousands of years ago. So they said there can be no contact between an infinite existence and a finite one. There's an unbridgeable gap. Where's the interface? Where's the bridge? Where's the connection? There can't be, because finite and infinite could never touch. And therefore, if finite and infinite could never touch, infinite, if it existed, could never create finite.
Well, they were missing the biggest idea in algebra. Not algebra, but what's the course after that?
Trigonometry?
No, not calculus.
Calculus.
Because the sum of infinitely many things can be finite, and that's the whole idea of the calculus.
Maybe that's what Leibniz and
Because you can have infinitely many small things, but eventually going to equal one.
I hear.
And that's infinitely small progression equals to one.
So maybe that's the Leibniz and Newton, who were both religious guys. Maybe they were able to figure it out based, I don't know. There's a lot to talk about there. I don't know enough about calculus to go from that angle, but the point is that the Greeks could not contemplate an infinite creator, so they had to come up with, but they still have a problem. Then where does everything come from? So their answer is somehow, in a way that we can't really explain, the finite just always existed. The eternal, infinite, finite existence. Because what's the benefit of this answer? It removes the problem of how do you have contact between infinity and finite.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews come along and they say, no, that doesn't make any sense that there could be infinite, finite. So we're saying that there is an infinite who created a finite. So the Greeks say, well, how do you answer the problem of no contact? The Jews say, we don't know, but our answer is still better than yours. So now, why is the Jewish answer superior? So listen to this. I'm getting so excited to share this with you. Rabbi Berkowitz said, listen to this idea. He said, imagine you have in front of you multiple irrational answers. Okay? Can you distinguish which of them is more irrational than the other? Can you compare irrationalities?
No.
He said, yes. Yes. And that's why we prefer our answer, because yes, our answer is irrational, but it still makes more sense than the Greek answer, and therefore we prefer our answer. Why is the Jewish answer less irrational than the Greek one? And now we actually come back to the American pragmatists, because we live in finite existence. And what's the one thing we know about all of finite existence? It's finite. there's no such thing as infinite finite. It doesn't make any sense. But infinite existence, if it exists, I don't know how infinite existence works. And so I'm going to take something that I know cannot be infinite finiteness, and I'm going to put that, I'm going to, so to speak, I'm going to make that God's problem. God, I don't know how you, the infinite being, created a finite existence, but that's your problem, not mine. I know that finite can't be infinite, and therefore an infinite creator is a better answer than a finite infinity. Because I live in finite, and that doesn't work. And I'm just reminded, it's such a great day. I'm just reminded, Rav Noach Weinberg used to give this. Okay, what time is it? How long are we going? Okay, we're gonna finish with this. Okay, Rav Noach used to give this. He used to tell the following story. He said that one day a guy came to him and said he was a Jew. He had converted to Christianity, and he said, "Why did you do that?" He says, "I'll tell you why. Because I grew up as a proud Jew, and I've never ever." He says, I was badly burned in an industrial accident. And while I was in the burn ward, these Christian missionaries told me that if I converted to Christianity, if I accepted Jesus as my savior, they would pray for me and I would be healed. And for a few days, I said, get out of here, I don't want to do anything. But I was in so much pain that finally I said, you know what? I'll do it. And if it works, I'll be a Christian.
Oh, wow. Of course.
And they prayed for him. And within 1 month, he walked out. Like, fine.
That's very powerful.
Right? And he said to Rav Noach Weinberg, I heard the story from Rav Noach Weinberg, right? So I'm telling you the story he told me. He said the man said to him, and that's why I became a Christian. Because
he kept his word.
They prayed for me, and I was healed. They did like lay on hands. I don't know if they touched him, he was burned, but whatever, some Christian ritual, and he was healed. So Rav Noach said, let me tell you a story to answer your story, your event. Okay? He said, imagine that all the greatest thinkers in human history would come to the United Nations. You know, your Newtons and your Einsteins and your Aristotles and your Socrates, everyone, all there. They're all there. And one little Jewish guy, one little old Jew from the shtetl. And they're all there in the United Nations. And a guy gets up, some dude gets up in front of them and says, watch what I can do. And he picks up his hands and the entire United Nations building rips out of the ground and floats in midair. Everyone's losing their minds. And then he takes the entire United Nations building, flies it into space, flies it into the center of the sun, flies it back to the earth, to the deepest ocean, brings it back and lands it in Manhattan, brings it back down, and everyone's just losing their minds what this guy can do. And the guy gets up and he says, I'm God. And all the people, they start bowing to him, Lord Almighty, God, you're so powerful, except the little Jewish guy. The little old Jewish guy comes over to him, he says, you know, that was a neat trick, but you're no God. How could he say that? So imagine the whole scenario again, up into space, into the sun, down to the earth, down to the water, back to the ground, and the guy gets up and he says, and everyone's listening, he goes, I am a frog. Everyone's going to go, what do you mean you're a frog? You're not a frog. I know what a frog looks like. You're not green. You're not small. You don't date pigs. Like, what do you have to do? Like, what do you're nothing to do with it. He says, Jews, we know God. We know what he looks like. And he doesn't look like a finite existence. So I don't care what tricks you can do. If you're a finite existence, you're not God. So Greeks, I don't care how smart you are. If you think the universe is infinitely finite, you're wrong. Okay. So this, we kind of went off on a bunch of different angles I wasn't originally thinking about, but that's fine. I had a fun journey. I hope you did as well.
Sure.
So what I wanted to kind of just, the idea I wanted to bring is the idea that there's the proper balance between Athens and Jerusalem is very simple to understand. Yafet will dwell in the tent of Shem. And I'll tell you a last quick story to finish up. My Rosh Yeshiva of Noach Weinberg, he has his brother was Rav Yaakov Weinberg, who's a giant rabbi as well. He was in Baltimore, Ner Yisrael. Rav Yaakov has a son, another Rabbi Weinberg. His first name is escaping me right now. I have one of his books at home, but I'm just forgetting his first name right now. And the younger Rav Weinberg asked his father, Rav Yaakov, can I learn essentially what we're calling right now Greek books. Can I learn math? Can I learn philosophy? Can I learn science? Whatever. And his father, Rav Yaakov, said to him the following: you can learn anything you want that's not intrinsically forbidden, like idol worship or pornography, whatever. You can learn anything you want as long as you can show me how it enhances your Torah. If you can show me how it enhances your Torah, you can learn anything. And this young man became a rabbi later, has unbelievable encyclopedic knowledge of, he knows science, he knows math, he knows philosophy. I heard one class from him. In one class, he was quoting philosophers, scientists. He quoted Shakespeare. He quoted poets. He connected it all to the parsha, and it was like, wow, it's incredible. He's obviously, all the Weinbergs are geniuses. The whole family, they're all certified geniuses. It's not fair, right? So that right there, and he wrote a book on Channukah, and he's delving deeply into this idea of that properly at the end of the day, the balance between Judaism and secular world, secular knowledge, is that Judaism comes first, Torah comes first, but if you make it primary, then all the knowledge of the beauty and success and power and wealth and science, technology are ready and available and good to be used to enhance Torah and to bring more Torah. The Vilna Gaon, I heard that he said that to be a full Torah scholar, you need to know secular wisdom also. So you can't be the maximum Torah scholar without being secular wisdom. And the Talmud does say, maybe this is related, that you can't be the greatest Torah scholar unless you're rich. It says you could be a great Torah scholar and be poor, but you would even been a greater Torah scholar if you're wealthy, because you'll have access to resources of the world. And Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, who compiled the Mishnah, the Talmud says he was fantastically wealthy, right? And that was by design. He had to be, the rabbi put together the Mishnah, had to be wealthy. So wealth and knowledge of the world, all these things are all properly used as tools for Hashem's will in the world. That's it. And you probably heard this before, but it's worth to repeat, especially for whoever's watching the video, that the word, the mountain of redemption in the Torah is Zion, Zion. And I heard from one of my rabbis that there's a Kabbalistic or Hasidic idea that if you spell the word Zion in Hebrew, it's a combination of the letter Tzadik with the word Yavan, which is Greece.
Right.
Right? Exactly. That's Yavan. And then put a Tzadik in front of it. Here, I'll show it to the audience. Right? If you see, hold on. Let me turn off my background. It's stopping where's the settings, virtual backgrounds, no virtual background. Okay, so you can see Yud Vav Nun spells Yavan, Greece, and Tzadik, which is the Hebrew letter which means Tzadik, a righteous person. When you combine it, Tzadik and Yavan, you get Sion, Zion, redemption. So as my rabbi said, you want to get the ultimate balance. You should have Torah scholars who are mathematicians. You should have Torah scholars who are scientists. You should have Torah scholars who are generals in the army. You should have Torah scholars who are business people. That's how you have Tzion. Of course, some Torah scholars who do nothing but learn Torah. Of course, you need the people who are going to be the rabbis and experts. But the ultimate is you want all of these tools and powers to be under the Torah. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording.
The Hebrew alphabet is also numbers, it's numeric.